For 73 consecutive years, Korea has not experienced peace. It began with an outbreak of conflict in the early 1950s between two opposing Korean states, with different visions for their future and strong supporters on each side determined to win. For 7 decades, that war seemed to have paused but never truly ended. And the two warring countries have lived in a frozen conflict ever since. In South Korea, rapid modernization and increasing wealth paved the way for a sophisticated arsenal, including modern weapons, advanced ships and aircraft, and someday an aircraft carrier. In the North, the combination of totalitarian rule and Soviet-era weapons has resulted in an army of over 1 million soldiers, a growing nuclear arsenal, and, perhaps most dangerous of all, hundreds of thousands of Special Forces personnel. Let's get to know the Korean People's Army Special Operations Forces, or as we'll call them in this video, the North Korean Special Forces, which are estimated to number around 200,000 people. They appear to be well-trained and well-equipped, using the most modern gear their supreme leader can afford. The North Korean Special Forces are among the most modern, mysterious, and dangerous weapons in the entire arsenal of the country. In this edition of our Special Operators series, we will discuss the nature of the North Korean SOF, explain the missions they carry out, and try to determine just how big of a threat they really are to their neighbors in South Korea. But before we begin, if you're new to our channel, make sure to subscribe so you'll always be updated with videos like this. Formation and history. Even on seemingly trivial topics, the true nature of life in the so-called Hermit Kingdom is strictly guarded. So when we try to present the history of a unit as secretive as the North Korean Special Forces, we can't share all the specific details that we usually provide about the Navy SEALs or the British SAS. But even with North Korea's most secretive agents, we know something about their origins and how they reached their current state. The first sign that North Korea was developing significant special forces dates back to 1966, less than a decade and a half after the armistice that officially ended the Korean War. In that year, North Korea began to disrupt the demilitarized zone that separates the two sides, separates them from South Korea through cross-border raids intended to coincide with the war in neighboring Vietnam. At that time, South Korea was a close ally of the United States, and while the U.S. was desperately supporting South Vietnam, North Korea saw an opportunity to sow chaos in the region, open another front in America's proxy war, and be something North Korea, China, and the Soviet Union could potentially exploit. The sudden change of fortune. Unfortunately for North Korea, the raids were not enough to reignite the Korean War, but their troops still gained valuable experience in ambushing South Korean soldiers stationed on patrol and at outposts. More than 100 South Korean soldiers and 15 Americans were killed in 1966 and 1967 in the hundreds of attacks carried out by North Korea's new unit. This already shows the skill of the North Koreans. The DMZ back then was not much different from what it is today, full of barriers, watchtowers, mines, and patrols that the North Koreans had to get past. It was a task that required a high level of skill. In several years of attacks, 3 incidents stand out. First is the Blue House Raid, an attempt carried out by the 124th Army Unit, a unit in North Korea at that time, assigned to subversive and guerrilla operations against the South, to assassinate the South Korean dictator Park Chung-hee. In this raid, 31 North Korean soldiers crossed the DMZ, wearing South Korean military uniforms and carrying submachine guns, 8 grenades, a pistol, and an anti-tank mine. There, they stayed for 2 days in the DMZ before encountering a group of woodcutters, who survived and reported them to the South Korean police. In the midst of the massive manhunt, Unit 124 reached the South Korean capital and got as close as 800 meters to the presidential residence. They hoped they could get through using their South Korean uniforms. When a police officer noticed their presence, a shootout ensued, and the manhunt continued for another 2 days before all but 2 were killed. Of the two survivors, one managed to return to North Korea and became a general, while the other was imprisoned in South Korea for decades before being pardoned, and eventually worked as a human rights advisor and religious minister. Equally dramatic, if not even more intense, was the incident that happened a day after this, when a U.S. Navy spy ship called the USS Pueblo was intercepted in international waters near the coast of Korea. During the attack on the ship, North Korea killed one American and took 82 others hostage. They were taken back to North Korea, where they remained for more than a year before the U.S. negotiated for their release. In October 1986, a unit of 120 Special Forces commandos landed near a village in South Korea with the aim of establishing a popular insurgency against the South. In the end, their plan failed. Within 2 weeks, South Korea captured all but 3 of the North Koreans who had infiltrated, and at that time, the fate of those 3 was unknown. Although this was the last attempt at mass infiltration by North Korea into the South during that period, it served as a strong reminder of the North's capabilities and their capacity to cause chaos. The raids continued until 1969, and by the end of the decade, when the DMZ had become easier to penetrate, North Korean troops had gained the critical experience needed to plan and potentially carry out similar attacks. In total, 70 American and 299 South Korean soldiers were killed, compared to nearly 400 from North Korea. The limited intelligence gathered from a single captured member of Unit 124 provided early insight into exactly what the unit was doing. When the information from that soldier and other captured members was compared with South Korean data, a picture emerged of a secret unit made up of 80 to 90 teams each with 30 operatives. The troops were selected based on their performance in the North Korean armed forces, physical strength, and were trained in marksmanship, hand-to-hand combat, and the communist doctrine of North Korea at that time. South Korea learned that the North Korean troops spent a long time in the south of the DMZ, almost being welcomed by their own leader in the north. Interestingly, former operatives who were interrogated reported that the suffering South Koreans were ready to accept them, hoping that communism would be the solution to all their problems. But they were surprised by the reality. It's hard to determine exactly what happened to North Korea's growing Special Forces unit after this. For decades, their unit was regarded as part of operations that were clearly visible, and when mentioned, it was through grand statements known from former dictator Kim Il-sung, followed by his son Kim Jong-il and grandson Kim Jong-un. During Kim Il-sung's time as supreme leader, he described the Special Forces as the strongest elite force of the entire Korean People's Army and the unique vanguard force of the armed forces of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. This doesn't reveal much about their real abilities. For many years, this was the only basis the West had for the unit. It could have grown into an ultra-capable elite spec ops force, or it could have been disbanded and only used as a showpiece in the regime's speeches. But in the early 2010s, the North Korean Special Forces were noticed again as the regime postured more aggressively after Kim Jong-il died, and Kim Jong-un, who was then young, rose as dictator. At that time, many thought that North Korea might be weakening or even collapsing. The regime needed something besides nuclear tests to appear strong and intimidating, and their chosen weapon was the Special Forces. In 2013, a white paper report from the U.S. Department of Defense described the North Korean SOF as one of the best trained. They are well-fed, well-treated, and a highly motivated force within the KPA. If others think that the DoD just picked the most attention-grabbing unit among other less credible ones, that's not true. The strategic SOF units scattered throughout North Korea are designed for rapid offensive operations, internal defense against foreign attacks, or limited attacks on vulnerable targets as part of coercive diplomacy. They operate in specialized units such as reconnaissance, airborne and seaborne commandos, and other specialties, all focused on speed of movement and surprise attacks to accomplish their mission. In short, North Korea has achieved a highly versatile military force that seems capable of carrying out a wide range of missions, particularly in offensive operations against the South. In 2014, speculation continued. South Korean intelligence reports indicate that North Korean special forces may have more than 200,000 soldiers, a special operations force larger than the entire militaries of the United Kingdom, Israel, Taiwan, or Germany. In modern times, North Korea displays an astonishing number of forces that continue to pose a threat in the 21st century despite severe international sanctions. In the following years, the Special Forces appeared in military parades, promotional videos, and regime propaganda, which they clearly noticed was alarming to Western audiences, something the regular North Korean military could no longer achieve. They are not regiments capable of facing the South Korean army, especially the Americans, in direct combat. The North Korean army claims that they are like human bombs protecting the center of the revolution. Modus Operandi. On paper, the North Korean military looks powerful. According to a report by the International Institute for Strategic Studies, it is believed that the country has more than 4,000 tanks, 2,500 armored vehicles, 5,500 multiple rocket launchers, 400 combat-worthy vessels, and more than 700 combat-capable aircraft and helicopters. Although these numbers have not yet been adjusted for North Korea's recent arms sales, in reality, much of their equipment is outdated, a kind of vintage mix of Soviet-era gear. It may be impressive to someone who is unarmed and just looking, but it is not enough to overcome the very powerful military of South Korea. At this point, the number of North Korean troops can no longer make up for the gap in quality, a gap they have no real way to fix with their current equipment. This is where the importance of the North Korean Special Forces comes in. They provide a new dimension to possible battles in the South because of their ability to misdirect, conduct surprise attacks, sabotage, and counterattack South Korean forces, and cause chaos in any defensive or offensive action that the South might undertake. As mentioned in the DoD report we cited, the North Korean SOF is designed to infiltrate South Korea in the event of a large-scale conflict and to attack weak targets, conduct reconnaissance and raids, and prevent a possible South Korean counteroffensive toward the north. If we consider the objective of this mission, along with the reality that for decades they have done nothing inside North Korea but study intelligence, plan attacks, and train for the specific operations assigned to their unit, it is reasonable to say that these operatives are truly skilled at their job. As for the division of personnel within the force, an analysis by the open-source intelligence company Janes showed that, according to South Korea, the U.S., and international intelligence, the North Korean Special Forces are divided into two main categories: the light infantry with 140,000 troops, and the 11th Storm Corps with the remaining 60,000 troops. Under the light infantry umbrella, the force is further divided into 7 light infantry divisions, 57 reconnaissance battalions, 12 light infantry or mechanized battalions that serve as shock troops on the front line, and 3 specialized reconnaissance brigades tasked with gathering intelligence, conducting sabotage, and carrying out assassinations. This also includes 3 airborne brigades to block and defend the beachheads where North Korea's regular troops will land, and 7 sniper brigades, including 3 for the Army, 2 for the Navy, and 2 for the Air Force. These snipers are assigned to disguise themselves as South Koreans, attack weak outposts, and incite uprisings among ordinary South Koreans. The Storm Corps, on the other hand, is composed of troops trained in unconventional warfare, including guiding other special operations units and carrying out complex missions inside South Korea. These are not just simple hit-and-run attacks, but extended campaigns behind enemy lines with minimal support. Regarding specific targets, it is believed that the Special Forces are optimized to identify and attack the joint American and South Korean intelligence and reconnaissance apparatus inside South Korea. The missions of the North Korean Special Forces include attacking air bases and neutralizing American and South Korean ballistic missiles and weapons of mass destruction. It is also believed that American bases in Japan, as well as several island groups in the West Sea of Korea, are also in their crosshairs. It is not clear if the special forces are only targeting military targets. In a total war scenario, it is also possible for them to carry out attacks on economic or infrastructure targets, or even on civilians. Whatever their objective is, it is clear that each detachment of the special forces is expected to be able to manage its own operations and continue even with limited support for a long period of time. From their appearances in military parades, satellite imagery of training grounds, and intelligence sources, it is clear that the special forces receive privileged access to certain equipment that are just a dream for the regular North Korean troops. At the top of the list, and practically the most important, is food. While most North Korean military personnel eat better than the average civilian, there's a big difference between eating better than the peasant class and actually eating well. The special forces eat well and have open access to the country's armories. They have more modern planes that can actually drop them by parachute behind enemy lines in South Korea in case of an attack. It is believed that they also operate in bases with underground runways that are difficult to target. The Storm Corps is believed to have access to several types of submarines, including high-speed semi-submersible landing craft capable of transporting thousands of operatives. Their forces are trained in urban warfare, mountain warfare, and nighttime warfare. The large number of snipers in their arsenal indicates that they are capable of carrying out asymmetrical guerrilla-style attacks and grueling operations that could turn Seoul into a war zone. In addition, the special forces are different from the strict and dogmatic military ranks of North Korea because they are designed to operate unconventionally. Many of their units are composed of women who are trained and ready to fight alongside men. They are highly integrated, combining naval, aerial, covert, and shock troop elements. Within a single structure, they are believed to be able to coordinate with North Korea's cyber warfare units to plan attacks. They use propeller-driven biplanes made of fabric and wood, which seem old but are almost invisible to radar. Their reconnaissance agents are trained in psychological warfare, document forgery, and kidnapping both military and civilian VIPs. So they're capable of creating hostage crises that are usually only seen in Hollywood. It is believed that they have enough stolen or replicated American and South Korean uniforms to conceal a large number of troops, and they are optimized to operate in small units. The smallest special forces unit can consist of only 3 to 5 soldiers. It is also believed that they possess biological and chemical weapons, including weaponized anthrax, mustard gas, sarin, and others. Enduring questions. When it comes to the final assessment of the North Korean Special Operations Forces, one question stands above all. Are they really that good? Of course, we can't speak about operations we don't know about. It could be small infiltrations into South Korea or quiet incidents on nearby islands that Korea doesn't want the world to know about. But to the best of our knowledge, they haven't had any active combat since the 1960s. With such an untested force, it's impossible to know if they're on par with some of the best operators in the world, or if they're just a paper tiger. A former American Green Beret who served in South Korea and spoke anonymously to Business Insider said that in his assessment, North Korean SOF would be a major challenge in a full-scale war. According to the former soldier, we have a technological advantage and our aircraft can strike back. And we can bomb them back to the Stone Age, but they will fight for their god. Since childhood, they were raised in a cultish environment where the supreme leader is their god. They are fanatical and resilient. Winter in Korea is no joke, and they were trained to survive and operate in these conditions. They will fight until the last man. This shows that North Korea's most elite operatives are deeply indoctrinated in the purpose of subversion, and they won't just negotiate or surrender easily unless it's absolutely necessary. Moreover, unlike most special operations forces that have existed for a long time, the North Korean SOF has had decades to focus on a single enemy. Unlike the US, China, or Russia, North Korea has no reason or means to project power in other countries. They also don't have any significant internal rebellions and have only one neighbor, because there are no distractions and no other competing objectives. North Korean special forces have almost unlimited time to prepare attacks on well-known and easily observable targets. Some can even be seen from the DMZ. Of course, this isn't always good for them. Tunnel vision can be paralyzing for any military force, and 50 years of tunnel vision is a different story. But if the SOF can adjust their tactics and incorporate new methods of attack, they could become the most dangerous enemy in South Korea, lying in wait for the first opportunity to strike. Hopefully, the world will never have to find out if the North Korean special forces are really that good. With South Korea, the US, Japan, and other countries continuing to build up their defenses against China, and therefore also against North Korea, it's possible that the long-awaited end of Korea will come quietly rather than through open conflict. But if war breaks out again, the North Korean Special Operations Forces will be behind enemy lines. What they will do in this situation, we won't know unless we see it happen.